Hey, what's up? I am at church at the moment, or at a church, and today I'm here to talk to you talk to you about peace. So today we had a little program, a little ministry initiative called Kaleo. So Kaleo is a program in which we meet on Saturday nights. We eat supper together, and we talk about Jesus. We get into the Bible, and today we talked about peace. We tell you that the whole point of the message was that we pursue peace through peace. The inclination in our minds when we encounter situations that threaten our peace is to jump into panic. But the best way to manage or to navigate a situation that challenges our very senses, challenges our sense of identity, challenges our emotional health, our anxiety goes up, all of those things. The best way to navigate that is actually to stop. Take a deep breath and go from there. Allowing God into the situation that we're wrestling with provides us an avenue through which we can experience peace. We gain more by getting up and going less. Like the less that we get up and go when we got a situation going on, the more that we're going to gain from God. And the reason is because God honors the person who waits upon him. God honors the person who trusts in him. God honors the person who has humility, and despite their desire to take things into their own hands and maybe the pride that influences the motivation of getting your way, God honors when we lay that down and instead choose to let him work it out. God honors us when we humble ourselves, when we're patient with him. You know, 1 Peter chapter 5 that says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that in due time he may lift you up." Casting all of your anxieties upon him because he cares for you. Inside of the prideful person is a muscle that engages the moment things begin to go wrong in order to reclaim control. And every person on planet Earth is prideful, at least a little. As C.S. Lewis said, the only way to truly overcome pride is to admit that you have it. The only way to truly be humble, to really have humility, is to admit that you struggle with pride, to be honest about that. And peace will come when we stop and wait upon God. Psalm 37 talks about how we're not meant to worry, how we're not meant to give into the pattern of fretting and committing evil acts and giving into anger and anxiety and fear, and instead to trust in God, to do good things, even when that seems like the worst thing to do, Sometimes it seems like the most efficient thing to do what's evil. And sometimes the most efficient thing is the evil thing to do. The options before us are presented as the short, easy way, the tremendously hard but seemingly easiest. Sometimes. Seemingly easiest. Or seemingly the slow and long obedient way, which means that we're not going to insist that our life go our way. Instead, let God do it his way, right? And that doesn't mean we're completely inactive. It doesn't mean that we're passive. It means that sometimes the best thing to do when we feel like we gotta get going is to stop altogether. And instead trust in God. Wait patiently for him. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Be strong and take heart. Wait for the Lord. Waiting for the Lord sometimes is the most courageous thing to do, because really it's only the person that chooses to be strong that has the courage to wait for God. If you've ever gone through a legal battle, maybe a nasty divorce, some sort of custody hearing, it can be really tempting to try and take things into your own hands in a way, and maybe even not pray about it at all. Just be like, well, this isn't a God thing. God doesn't care about this. And it's like, bro, God cares for you. So let's work our way back from there and cast all our anxieties on him, humble ourselves before him, because the time will come when he's going to lift you up. Even if you feel humiliated, God has a way of not just using that to change your character to be more conditioned to be humble, but also he will take that situation, even if it seems impossible to be unhumiliated, and he'll lift you up. He'll exalt you. The Bible says he lifts up the humble. He exalts those who humble themselves, right? Those who exalt themselves, on the contrary, will be humbled, right? So somebody who is courageous will take the slow and long obedient approach and see a great reward from that. But the person who has pride and anger and anxiety will just jump to fix things. And sometimes that happens in small ways, and sometimes it happens in big ways. And anger is sometimes a symptom of our lack of control of ourselves and an insistence that the world and God owes us something, that we're entitled to have things our way, and so we better pursue it in that way. But that will never lead us to peace. Anger will only take us to peace if we have the tools and the conditioning, right, to control it and point those feelings in the right direction. God doesn't say to pretend that you don't have anger. If you have anger, right, and you're experiencing an outburst in the moment, even while you're raging out, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, and you're screaming, or you're just holding on to this sort of smoldering bitterness or unforgiveness. God doesn't need you to be dishonest, right? He can deal with the reality of what you're feeling. But the question is, are we willing to be honest? Are we willing to have the humility to say, okay, God, straight up, I'm wrestling with anger. Your word says that really there's no person that's perfect. I'm allowed to bring this to you, even though it's not comfy, even though the word says that it's not right to sin in my anger. God, I'm feeling I really want to sin right now in my anger, but I don't really want to do that. So help me to do what's really good to do. And so the only way really to start to experience freedom from anger, freedom from anxiety, because there's clinical anxiety, right? And that's sometimes a symptom of something else. And sometimes it's the issue. I think a lot of times the anxieties that we take on, the feeling of anxiety is often a symptom that stems right back to the same root cause of anger, which is the loss of control and the lack of control. But we don't need our circumstances to perfectly have alignment with our ideals in order to have peace. All we need to do is pursue Jesus through doing the kinds of things that a peaceful person would do. Like a peaceful person probably would not scream at the top of their lungs at somebody in anger and rage. You know what I mean? Like a person of peace might be able to have that experience of feeling anger, but then take a deep breath and say, Jesus, I invite you into this. And you can do that. It's not outside of what you're able to do. It's not outside of what's attainable. And so what we started with at the beginning of our talk tonight at Kaleo in Freedom Church was this passage in Psalm 43, verse 1, where it says, God, declare me innocent. Why am I dealing with all these oppressors all the time? And I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel oppressed. Sometimes I feel assaulted. Sometimes I feel like I'm lacking grace. You know what I mean? And I need God's grace to come and be like, Noah, I love you, man. You know what I mean? You might not be the one at fault here. And sometimes we have to have the humility to actually let God tell us that we're not at fault. Isn't that something to wrap your head around? But let me sum it up like this, okay? Psalm 37 starts in almost the same place. God, where the psalmist says, don't be worried about evil people. Whereas Psalm 43 is like, God, get me out of evil people's presence. Get rid of these people. And God's like, no, you don't need to worry about that. What you need to do is get before me, sit with me, and let me help you. Because I really do care, and I really will help you. So are you willing to sit with me, to rest, and let me take on the heavy burden that you're dealing with?